My guests now are Bob, James and Trevor. So welcome to the show, boys.
Thank you.
If you don't mind me calling you boys. So make sure you're all on a microphone first. We're talking about the one-act plays at the Everyman Theatre. And I remember last year when they gave the resumes for the one-act plays, they were mouth-watering, and so are this year's. And we've got two Americans who are over here, and one Welshman. Bob, James, great lineup for the tonight and tomorrow.
Oh, excellent. We had many very good plays in. It's actually at the Unity, if I could just correct that. Yeah. Not the Everyman, we're on at the Unity. Yes, an excellent play. What I do like about them is they're all very different. We have two John Lennons, both very believable, but both absolutely wonderful. So that's what we like about it, is the difference in the style. And very, very strong acting this year. Very impressed.
I've always, if I go to an airport and I'm looking for something to read on the plane, I get sold by the back of the book. That's what makes me buy it, the back of the book.
Sure.
Same with the write-up for the film. And this is what's great about these as well, when it describes what it's about. Like Bob's entry here today has got John and Paul sparring about their songs and exchanging tender moments from childhood. And yours is about Brian Epstein trying to sort out the problem. So yours is about Brian Epstein trying to sort out the problem of I'm greater than Jesus,
Bigger
as
than
John
Jesus.
Lennon said.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, you're both Beatles fans, aren't you?
Oh, yes. I was a huge Beatles fan. I actually saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show and begged my parents for, at the time, the Beatles wig was a big thing. And they were known, of course, as the Mop Tops. So they actually gave me the top to a mop as my Beatles wig. I think I have a photograph of that somewhere. So
She should have been an entrepreneur, your mother.
exactly.
And that's it. They were your childhood then, were they, Bob?
Oh yeah, growing up with the Beatles was truly a remarkable thing. I mean, you waited every week or so for a new song, and they were kind of the big brothers, and showing the way, and just amazing how they evolved, and was fabulous.
Now, for me,
Is it Trevor?
Right. So I was born in 1976. So I guess that basically Rollers, I think, were pretty big then. But when Guns N' Roses was big, or Prince, or Bon Jovi, I was really, I don't know. I've told people it's almost as if I had a tumor. All I could listen to was the Beatles. I got the Beatles 20 Greatest Hits. And I played it to death. I played it constantly. And where I really didn't retain a lot of information in my math class or science class, I retained everything that I read about the Beatles. And I studied the Beatles like someone studies in America baseball stats, or I guess, cricket stats. Or, it's just something, no detail is too minute for me. So I guess you could call me a true Beatles freak. I think that's the way they describe it in the U.S.
I think it's fair enough. And Beatles freaks know every portion that happened to them, every line of every song and everything. I mean, the impact in the States, I felt it. The first time I went to the States was 1971. And even then, in 1971, when you said you're from Liverpool, wow, sure. You from Liverpool? First question, have you met the Beatles? But Liverpool was a magic word there in the 70s.
Oh, absolutely. And I wrote for the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
And I wrote an episode about the Beatles, and I was so excited because I wanted to start with the actual footage of the Ed Sullivan Show, and we actually wrote to Apple, and they gave us permission to use that. Mm-hmm. And so Kevin gets to watch the Beatles just the way I did on the Ed Sullivan Show, and it was, that was 70 million people, which you think back now, I mean, a show like Breaking Bad, the finale, I think, was 10 million people.
Oh, yeah.
But the population was so much smaller back then. That was almost half.
And Bob only mentioned Breaking Bad because Bryan Cranston was, of course, the star of one of your series, wasn't he?
That's true. Brian is hilarious and a really nice guy. But my memory of Brian is always standing in his underwear waiting for the next shot, because we always had him in his underwear. He'd have a mug of coffee, and he'd be chatting with the crew while the other actors might be in their trailers, but he was always such a nice guy, and we always did such terrible things to him. We had an episode where he was covered in bees, and he was always game to do anything. He had to learn how to roller skate and all kinds of wild things.
I know, I've often said, excuse us talking about this, I've often said, you know, Bryan Cranston, because of the success of Breaking Bad, you can get all these mugs and everything, and, you know, these pictures, but they're not marketing Bryan Cranston underpants. I would have thought...
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. Absolutely. The tighty whitey, because that carried from Malcolm into Breaking Bad. He was always in those.
He was Malcolm's dad, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But I watched that now and then and all that, and I watched the Wonder Years, loved that. But I've never understood why somebody didn't market Bryan Cranston underpants.
Oh, well, there you go.
Because
there's the opportunity.
Used to always say, he's in his underpants again. Not a pretty sight. And no, you, Trevor, yours is about the argument over Jesus, which broke in the States very, very big, didn't it?
It did.
And got John in a lot of trouble.
It did. And, you know, when I think about today, I mean, how often do we see a celebrity write a tweet, you know, that they quickly delete? But, of course, nothing gets deleted in this day of age. So how many times do we have to see somebody apologize for something they said? And so for me, it was interesting to see where for John Lennon, there was a big change back then where he was Beatle John. I mean, the John Lennon that we remember now is, you know, give peace a chance. Well, how did he get to that point? And in the beginning, in the 60s, I don't think he really understood as an entertainer he had anything important to say or that people would take him seriously. And when he said the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, you know, and they're suddenly burning his records, you know, in the southern United States, and they're banning the songs, and he's starting to realize, no, wait, I do have a platform. And I do have to be careful about what I say. And the play is really the journey for John at first thinking, you know, no one cares what I have to say. I don't need to apologize for anything until he realizes that what he says matters. And he does have to apologize. But then from there, it's a launching pad of becoming the John Lennon that we got to know with the, you know, Bed In for Peace, you know, and planning the Acorns with Yoko. So it's an important time in his life, and it's one that I'm very interested in.
And did you have to read up a lot on Bryan to give you the idea of what Bryan's reaction was to that?
Sure. You know, and there's been a lot about that's written about Bryan's personal life. And what I wanted to focus on was more his business aspect about what he had to deal with, because there was a point where he had to actually go to New York earlier than they were planning on going for the next. The Beatles' U.S. tour was happening just a week later. He did have to go to New York, and he did try to apologize without apologizing, and of course it went over like a lead balloon. It landed with a thud. And so I definitely read his speech that he made to the press of saying, you know, he took him out of context, and John Lennon.
Which made sense.
Yeah, sure.
That was a great excuse.
Sure. But you know, obviously it didn't work. So it was, for me, it was a great setup of how they would work, you know, and of course Bryan saying, you must apologize, John, and John saying, no, we're just a puppet show. No one cares. No one cares what we think. We're just entertainers. We're just going to shake our heads and say, yeah. Who cares what we have to say about, you know, but it also involves like a little bit of the bubbling of the Vietnam War, you know, and I have to say this, you know, going back to Bob, you know, The Wonder Years was a huge show for me as a kid. And my favorite episode is actually the one that Bob wrote, which was about the Beatles. And I mean, I just loved that so much. And The Wonder Years talks about Vietnam. So for me, I'd have to say The Wonder Years helped shape, you know, maybe it's why I got so into the 60s as a kid. I've always felt like I was born in the wrong generation. I think part of that is because of The Wonder Years.
And in all fairness, I think Bryan's quality as a businessman in the States when he first went was pretty banal, because he sold off the rights to the Beatles' toys and stuff like that for next to nothing. But I remember interviewing Peter Brown, one of Bryan's closest associates, and I said to him, I used to go in Nems, and I think Bryan was the best record shop manager I've ever met. And Peter said to me, he'd be absolutely over the moon to hear you say that. Because he was proud of Nems as an organisation.
Well, absolutely. He was proud of his family. Yeah. You know, and that's what I think that I've learned in the research is he really did, you know, want to carry on the family name in the right way. Okay,
Bob, how difficult is it? What's the difference writing a one-act play and writing for all the people?
Well, I'll tell you.
And I love Nightcap, by the way. That was hysterical.
Thank you.
Hysterical.
It's funny when you write on a TV show. You're in a room with a bunch of other writers, and it's very collaborative. So. It's a bunch of high-strung, neurotic people who have probably all been the class clown growing up, but now you have a room full of them. So it's very chaotic. And for this, for me, the challenge was to write all by myself and to I was really drawn to this because it was about John and Paul's relationship, which, Paul said that John had a soft side that he showed to me, and I thought it was just fascinating to see how they actually related and to explore that. So, but it was working on my own. That was the challenge for me. So,
I mean, have you taken any? Obviously, but when you're writing it, it's what period of time is it that it's set in? Is there a year?
This one was 1964, because what happened was I was just driving along, minding my own business, listening to the radio, and it was the 50-year anniversary of the Ed Sullivan Show. So they decided to play a little clip from an interview with Paul McCartney. That was, I think, from 2002 or something, where he talked about, I guess he was reading lyrics from his play, from his songs that had been published as poems, and he was asked to read this one song which he dedicated to John, and it was about how they had spent a couple of nights holed up in a motel in Florida because there was a hurricane, and he said they did what most young guys like themselves would do if they were stuck in a motel. They just drank, and they spent the night just talking, and then some pretty shocking and amazing things came out of that about their relationship. And I thought to myself, that's a play. That's a play. Just there they are in a motel room, these two geniuses who have shared this boyhood together, and finally kind of getting into their relationship. So I thought that was quite exciting.
I wonder what John would have thought about what happened later when Paul tried to get the songs he'd written and done to him, and the songs John had written done to him rather than both.
Yeah. I'm sure he would have had something better to say than I could possibly say.
OK, we're going to take the travel. We'll have a quick word with James as well about the third entry, because we mustn't ignore that.
Indeed, absolutely not. I shall here defend our friend Neil from the UK.
OK, and then we'll talk to Bob and Trevor as well.
Travel, BBC Radio Merseyside.
Here's Marie.
Thanks a lot, Billy. At Penny Lane in Haydock, those temporary lights are in place, so just be aware of that. Very heavy traffic in the area, and quite a bit of traffic as well. Coastal Road at Southport, they're dealing with a collapsed sewer. They have been for a number of days now, but Shore Road, the Pontins roundabout to Marine Drive and World Road, it is closed with a lengthy diversion in place. Big thanks to George, who's keeping us updated on that, to remind me to tell you about that. Slow traffic on the westbound M62, leaving the motorway at Junction 7 onto St Helens Linkway, a broken down vehicle. And a reminder in Hooton, emergency repairs to a damaged lamppost means that the A550 is closed from the A41 to Ledsham Road. That stretch between Newchester Road and Ledsham Road. If you can help us out like George did, the number to call is 0151 794 0953. Marie Megan, BBC Radio Merseyside Travel.
Dancing, sewing, acting, singing. What are you missing out on? Up for Arts is here for you to signpost you to great events and sessions throughout the area. Wirral, Knowsley, St Helens, Liverpool and Sefton. Check out Up for Arts Liverpool on Facebook, call the A-Team on 0151 794 0984 or drop in and see us at BBC Radio Merseyside. Get up, get out and get active for summer 2014 with BBC Radio Merseyside and Up for Arts.
Mrs. Butler's eldest.
Billy Butler, BBC Radio Merseyside.
We're talking about the one-act plays at the Unity Theatre tonight and tomorrow, and all three plays are going to be repeated tonight and tomorrow. And then how was the verdict reached, James?
The verdict was reached anonymously. We had about 20 entries this year, and the assessor went through them totally blind. So unfortunately, several people who are friends of mine who entered probably aren't talking to me at the moment. We had, as I say, we've always attracted, and this is our third year of doing a similar venture, stuff from abroad, sometimes from Australia and Canada as well as America. And the verdict was reached anonymously, and we discovered that we did have two American writers and Neil Walden, who lives in Wales. So we've actually not got any real English entries, but we do have Neil doing a wonderful job with the UK entry. He has taken the theme of one of the Beatles songs, that's the Maxwell Silver Hammer, and he's got a very, very nice spooky piece set in the 30s of a Maxwell character, and we have I have to say, a lovely Maxwell who has a sort of, he's on the run, and he has a sort of a romance in the Isle of Man with a girl who runs a boarding house where he's staying, and it's a wonderful Walter Mitty character, and it's really wonderfully engaging and lots of fun.
Who picked the actors that are portraying the people?
Our artistic director this year is Martin Henschel. I've teamed up with him. I met him through Liverpool Playwrights, of which I'm a member, which started a lot of this off. And he volunteered to take over the mantle this year, and himself has been trained as both an actor and director. And he has a lot of young actors who are friends of his or people who he has worked with, because he has had plays. In fact, his own plays have been performed in places like Canada and stuff. So he's collected quite a few talented actors, and very, very keen he's been to get the right person for the right part. He's often held off, making me a bit nervous about getting the casting list, but he's done the right thing, because I have to say, having seen the advanced rehearsals, I have been really, really impressed with his collection of actors.
How long is each play?
Each play is about 40 minutes.
Okay. And all three are tonight and all three are tomorrow?
Indeed so. And the public who come do have, a bit like the X Factor system, if you like, they have a vote. Excellent. And tonight's vote will be added, or tonight's audience votes will be added to tomorrow night's audience. But tomorrow night we will also have in two professional judges who will sort of equal vote, as it were, with this. There's Claire Dow, who used to run the Liverpool Theatre School for many years, and her partner Ian Kelgrin, who, among other things, is the longest-serving artistic director of our own Everyman, and he was a former literary manager, very relevant, of the Royal Court in London, which is known for a lot of its starting off good writers.
Okay, sounds absolutely brilliant. And you want to go a bit better than last year, don't you, Trevor? Because
oh, sure,
you were fourth last year.
That was fourth, joint fourth. Which was I was just happy to be there. You know, I wasn't able to come out for the actual performance. I wish I could have, but I was just thrilled to be a part of the competition.
Have you had any press in the States, Bob? Because it's very unusual, a hit writer from all these comedy shows going over to Liverpool to enter a one-act play competition.
Yeah. Well, not so far. Not so far.
Yeah. Well, you talked before about when you have these script writing moments with all your cohorts when you put the show together. There must be times when you'll say, "I've got this really great line here." He says, "He does," and you finish, and nobody's impressed.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. That's the thing. They're all your competitors, because whoever is going to come up with a funny line is the one who's going to get it in the script. But it's a funny situation where the atmosphere is so different from any other workplace, where you're encouraged to just do crazy things and pull pranks. And for instance, on Night Court, my office was right next to a lovely lady named Teresa, and we had our names on the door, and then there was the men's room. So I just slid out the men's room door sign and put it on Teresa's, and put Teresa's on the men's room.
I'd watch him tomorrow if I was you. I watch him tomorrow now, I'll tell you.
But there were all kinds of crazy things like that we would do.
So presumably there'll be a bit of humour in this discussion between John and Paul, because being from Liverpool,
it starts off.
There's bound to be humour in it.
That's what came very naturally to me and was quite enjoyable, was to particularly, John with all of the, the barbs and the jokes and so on. So they're having a lot of fun in the beginning, and then as time wears on and the alcohol starts to kick in, other things start to come out. But it's a lot of fun in the beginning.
And there's rumours, of course, that Brian and John were very, very close.
Sure.
Trevor, is that borne in mind when he's lecturing John?
No, not necessarily. I think it's more of almost a fatherly figure. I think, they had a very complicated relationship. In this particular situation, they really had to go into it because the Beatles were on the line. I mean, if they were used to getting maybe 2 death threats in a tour, which is, I think, any traveling act of their size would get, they were suddenly getting 17. and it's being sponsored by the Ku Klux Klan, and it's much serious. And I also try to put in snippets of what's going on in America at that time, which is, you have race riots happening in Cleveland, the Vietnam War is escalating, LBJ sending in more troops, but also you have a madman in Texas who starts shooting people from University of Austin, Texas Tower. So America's starting to turn into a tinderbox. It's not. It's becoming a little bit more dangerous. And what he has said is really struck the nerve of very, religious zealots in the South, who mean business. So when the KKK gets involved, it's not just a simple yeah sort of thing. You really have to think about what you have to do. And the question was, do we cancel the tour? And that's going to cost £1 million. It's a lot of money. So I think they really had to think about what was the best foot forward as far as an apology goes. And, of course, John didn't want to do it.
Well, he burnt all the rock and roll records years ago. It never worked, did he? When he had all that pile of all the rock and roll records in the 50s. Right. So that didn't work either. James, are the tickets available for tonight or tomorrow?
Yes, indeed. There are tickets still available for both nights. So people have to either book online or as usually with the Unity, or indeed rock up on the night, whichever you prefer.
And there's a great bar there just after the show.
There is an excellent bar at the Unity, very much so. And, of course, tomorrow night we will be announcing the winner of the modest £150 prize.
Which in dollars isn't as much as it was 2 years ago, but never mind. Thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you very much, Bob. And thank you, James.
Thank you very much, Billy.